Welcome to the Deep Dive, and thanks for joining us.
Great to be here.
You're tuning in because, like us, you want to get to the heart of things, right? Find those aha moments, but without, drowning in information.
Definitely. And today we're tackling something that sounds a bit backwards at first glance.
Yeah, how getting things wrong might actually be, well, essential for startup success.
And our main guide for this deep dive is Rowan Simpson, specifically his book, How to Be Wrong.
Rowan's got some serious street cred in the New Zealand tech scene, doesn't he?
Oh, absolutely. Early days at TradeMe, Investor in Zero, Vend, Timely, some huge names. So he's really seen it all from the inside.
So this isn't just theory.
Not at all. It's grounded in years of experience. We're pulling from his book, but also some essays and interviews he's done to get a full picture.
Okay, so the goal here is to extract Rowan's practical advice for navigating that, let's face it, messy startup journey where mistakes are pretty much guaranteed.
Exactly. It's about seeing wrong not as the end, but as maybe a necessary step towards right.
So where does he kick this off, this whole idea of embracing being wrong?
Well, the core idea, the sort of philosophical shift he advocates for, is that the quickest way to eventually be right is to be much more open about being wrong.
Okay.
And crucially, spotting it when it happens, it flips the whole narrative around failure.
And he actually breaks it down, doesn't he?
Okay.
In the book, he mentions 3 specific ways you can be wrong. I found that really useful.
Yeah, they're very practical. The first one is basically not asking the question, meaning not measuring things, not looking for the data. If you aren't tracking key metrics, you're essentially guessing, right? You have no way to know if your assumptions hold water.
Flying blind.
Yeah.
Okay, what's the second way?
The second is making a mistake, but in the sense of like sticking your head in the sand. Refusing to accept that maybe your current plan isn't working, even when the signs are there.
Doubling down when you shouldn't.
Pretty much. Just because you've sunk time or money into it. And the third one might feel a bit harsh, but he calls it lying.
Lying.
Yeah, but he means not being honest with yourself, your team, maybe your investors, that something just isn't working out. Avoiding that hard truth.
So it sounds like step 1 is getting that feedback, setting up ways to measure. Step 2 is actually listening to it, even if it's bad news. And step 3 is being brutally honest about what it means.
You've got it. And Rowan links this directly to this concept of failing better.
Right. Not trying to fail, but setting things up so you learn fast when you inevitably stumble.
Yeah, exactly. By avoiding those 3 pitfalls, not measuring, denial, dishonesty, you're inherently building a system that learns from mistakes more effectively.
Yeah.
He talks a lot about creating these feedback loops.
So for someone listening, that could be customer surveys, tracking KPIs closely.
Or even just really frank team meetings. The key isn't just collecting the info, it's building in the process to actually digest it and, do something based on what you learn.
He also has that practical tool, the pre-mortem. That seems super useful for planning.
Oh, it's great. The idea is, okay, fast forward 6 months, your project failed miserably. Why?
Ouch. But I see the value.
You get your team together and brainstorm all the plausible reasons for this hypothetical failure. It forces you to confront risks you might otherwise ignore in the initial excitement.
Learning from failure before it happens.
Sort of, yeah. And he suggests doing the opposite, too. Imagine it's a massive success. What really drove that? What parts could you actually control? It helps focus your efforts.
Running mental simulations.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's shift gears slightly. Another huge theme for Rowan is execution, right? That it trumps the idea itself.
Absolutely. Comes up again and again. You can have the most brilliant, world-changing idea, but if you can't execute on it, well, it doesn't matter much.
He has that great line in one of his essays.
Ideas are the denominator. Execution is the numerator.
That's the one. It really sticks.
Yeah.
So the quality of the idea is just part of the equation. How well you build it, sell it, scale it. That's the critical part.
And he links this to how companies evolve, doesn't he? Through different stages.
Right, the technology, features, experience, price stages.
Yeah, and his point is that what matters most and who you need on your team changes as you move through those. Maybe early on, it's all about the unique tech.
But later?
Later, competitors catch up, and maybe it's more about building out the features or creating a really smooth user experience or eventually competing on price. Knowing your stage helps you focus your execution.
So he poses this interesting question. Is it better to invent something totally new or get really, really good at the how, like the experience, the selling, the scaling?
And his leaning seems to be towards the how.
Really?
Well, yeah, a novel invention might give you a head start, but he suggests the long-term sustainable advantage often comes from mastering the execution, the customer experience, the sales process, the operational efficiency.
It connects to that startup theater idea he mentioned.
Oh, yeah, definitely. The focus on the flashy launch, the big idea pitch. Sometimes that overshadows the long, hard grind of actually making it work day to day.
Like that Dave Grohl analogy he uses about starting a band.
Right. You start by sucking in a garage, not by manufacturing an image. It's the practice, the grind, the execution that matters.
The unglamorous work. Okay, so let's talk about the bigger picture, the startup ecosystem.
Right.
Rowan has this concept of exhaust. What's that about?
He sees an ecosystem not just as a bunch of separate companies, but as this living environment. And successful companies, they generate valuable byproducts. That's the exhaust.
Byproducts
Like capital founders and early employees reinvesting their winnings. Like knowledge and experienced people leave successful startups and take that expertise to new ventures or become advisors.
so it seeds the next generation.
Precisely. He uses Trade Me as a prime example in New Zealand. People from there were key in getting Xero and Vend off the ground, both as investors and team members. Rod Drury, Xero's founder, was on the Trade Me board.
Ah, okay. It's that flow of talent, money, and know-how.
Yeah, like a healthy forest where old trees help new ones grow.
What about things like incubators, accelerators, those supporting layers? What's Rowan's view on their role?
It's a bit nuanced. He sees a place for them, sure, but he cautions against focusing too much on them rather than on the founders and teams themselves.
That's so.
Well, sometimes there's this rush to build, shiny incubator buildings, but Rowan questions if that's always the best use of resources compared to, say, providing more direct seed funding or access to genuinely experienced mentors.
So fancy office space isn't the magic bullet.
His point seems to be that the real leverage comes from people who've actually done it before, providing direct, relevant advice and maybe that crucial early check.
That's a good point for people to consider. Direct help versus just infrastructure.
Okay, Rowan also busts a few common startup myths, doesn't he? Like the lone genius.
Oh, he definitely pushes back hard on that one. The romantic idea of one brilliant person doing it all. He says, based on his experience, it's just not true.
It takes a village, essentially. It's absolutely a team sport. He even quotes that Bertolt Brecht poem about who really built Thebes. Was it just the kings listed in the books? Or the people dragging the stones?
Right. It takes many contributions. What about early-stage investment? He challenges the idea of spreading bets too thin.
Yeah, the concentration versus diversification argument. While diversifying makes sense later on to manage risk, Rowan suggests that for very early stage, investors might be better off making fewer, larger bets because it allows them to invest not just money, but also significant time and expertise to really help those few companies succeed. Spreading yourself too thin means you can't offer much meaningful support to anyone.
But it requires more conviction in those few bets.
Absolutely. Higher risk, potentially higher reward, and a bigger commitment of time.
And the idea that lack of capital is always the biggest problem, especially in places like New Zealand.
He pushes back on that too. He acknowledges funding is crucial, obviously, but argues it's often not the primary bottleneck.
What is then, in his view?
Finding the right people, nailing the execution. He thinks those are often bigger hurdles than just the availability of cash, even in smaller markets.
So focus on team and execution. Don't just blame lack of funding. He also has a specific take on fail fast, right?
Yeah.
Not quite what you might think.
Yeah, it's more nuanced. He's not saying go out and try to fail spectacularly. It's more about that constant learning loop.
From being wrong in small ways.
Exactly. Use the feedback loops, monitor the data, be willing to make small, quick adjustments when things aren't working. It's about iterative learning, not glorifying massive flameouts.
Okay, last key area, this idea of understanding how we win. It's about having a plan.
Yeah. Not just a destination like we want to be huge, but a route. A clear, thought out, even if flexible plan for how you're actually going to get there.
He uses Vend as an example.
Right, how early on they broke their strategy into 4 streams. Build a great team, build a great product, develop low-touch sales channels, and manage cash carefully. Having that clarity helps guide execution.
And related to planning, there's that we realized. Pitching style, he suggests.
Yeah, instead of presenting this perfect unchanging vision.
Which probably isn't realistic anyway.
Right. He suggests framing your story around what you've learned. We started thinking X, but then we ran this experiment, talked to customers, and we realized Y.
It shows you're learning and adapting.
Exactly. It shows you're open to being wrong and are adjusting based on evidence, which can actually be much more convincing to investors than a rigid, untested plan.
Okay, this has been incredibly useful. Let's quickly sum up the big takeaways for everyone listening.
Sure. So number one, embrace being wrong. Be open to it, learn from it. It's key to eventually being right.
Number 2, execution is king. Ideas matter, but making them happen matters more.
3, ecosystems grow organically, often fueled by the exhaust, the capital, and talent from previous successes.
4, challenge those common myths. The lone genius, lack of capital is the only issue, maybe even the standard diversification model early on.
And 5, have a clear, adaptable plan for how we win, focusing on the route, and be willing to share what you learn using that we realized approach.
It really comes down to the fact that mistakes are unavoidable in this game, isn't it?
Totally. Success isn't about not making mistakes. Rowan's whole point seems to be it's about how you deal with them, how you acknowledge, learn, and adjust.
So a final thought for you, our listener, to maybe chew on. Think about the last time you were genuinely wrong about something important. Could be work, could be life.
What did you actually learn from that moment?
And how can you consciously bring that same openness, that willingness to be wrong and learn into whatever you're working on now, whether it's a startup, a project, or just a personal goal?
Try seeing those moments not as setbacks, but as, well, as crucial data. Data that guides you towards understanding and hopefully towards making real progress.
Thanks for taking this deep dive with us today.